Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is shelter for the homeless. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about shelter for the homeless, Mr. JSettles and Mr. Carter Abels, both members of an organization called Ephesus House. And of course, Mr. Settles and Mr. Abels, let me welcome the two of you to the show this morning and to tell you how delighted we are to have the two of you with us this morning, and especially to talk about an issue that is very, very prevalent and very, very popular this morning, because we find that there are many situations where people are without housing. And I think that your organization is involved in dealing with housing for the various groups. So let's start off, Mr. Settles, by having you give us some information in reference to your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And of course, Mr. Abels will do the same thing. And then after this first segment of 6 minutes, then we'll get back, we'll have our first commercial break, and then we'll come back for our second segment, and then we'll talk about other things. And by that time, we should have a fairly good idea in terms of some of the challenges that are faced by individuals who are seeking housing. So let's start off with you, Mr. Settles, by giving us some information in reference to your background, your education, and some of your experiences.
Well, I'm James Settles, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Part of my background is I remember going to prison myself back in '86, and also getting out of prison in '93 actually. And it was from there I remember starting a home called Ephesus House in '03. And part of that was because I went to prison and battled with a drug addiction and all of that. And as I came into a personal relationship with God, He began to show me how to do this thing the correct way. And I'm under the old school: to whom much is given, I believe much is required. So that's how Ephesus House was actually formed, to reach back and help others the way people helped me.
Very good. Mr. Carter Abel, what about your situation?
Sure. So my name's Carter Abel. I grew up in Northeast Arkansas in a pretty rural community. Moved to Nashville in 2009, and moving to Nashville was really the first experience first time I'd ever encountered anything resembling homelessness, and it was mind-blowing to me. And so I got connected in the nonprofit community here, got connected to James and Ephesus House through a former professor, and just love being able to contribute to the housing conversation and giving guys a chance to turn their lives around and get a new start.
Mr. Settles, in terms of talking about shelter for the homeless and various other groups, what are some of the groups that you would identify as your target area in terms of individuals who come to you, and where do they come to, and how do you meet them when they get there? And so we've got about 2 minutes before this segment ends. Let's give us that kind of information.
Well, we actually put an emphasis on men that are coming out of incarceration and men that are homeless, that battle with substance abuse issues, and which both of those issues I battled with at one time. And that's what I mean when I say He delivered me. I remember going into treatment several times, but it was really coming into a personal relationship with Jesus that things got better.
And so in a real sense, you're using your own personal experiences to reach out to others. How long have you been working in this area? I mean, this organization, how is this a relatively new organization or what?
Ephesus House was started in '03, and we now have 4 facilities, where one of them we use for actually staff, and the other 3 places we house men. We can house up to 28 at any one time.
And so you've got a very, very viable organization, and you're able to reach out to a large number of, especially incarcerated individuals coming out of the system who might need some kind of housing, et cetera. And so what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break, and then, Mr. Carter, when we come back, we'll start with you, and we'll have an 8-minute segment, and that will give you an opportunity to talk about some of your opportunities and some of your actions in terms of dealing with Ephesus House. And in addition to perhaps say as much as you possibly can about Arkansas, because I happen to know somebody who came from Arkansas, and And of course, I'm from Arkansas myself.
Wonderful.
So we're from a place called Hope, Arkansas. And I think that you indicated that you recently came to Nashville, and so you probably know something about Hope, Arkansas. And when we come back, we want to hear some of the things that you have to say in terms of how you came to Nashville and how you became involved with Mr. Settles. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Anything that you think might be of some significance or some importance dealing with this this 8-minute segment. You'll have about 3 minutes, and then you'll have 3 minutes to sort of build into what he's talking about, and then I'll go back to him for another couple of minutes, and then we'll be out of that 8-minute segment. Okay.
I'll lay out the need, and I'll lead in so you can talk about expansion and eventually the campus. I wouldn't talk about locations yet.
Okay.
But
and also, I'm not going to talk about how many people we're talking about housing either.
Yeah.
We just want to increase the number of people we serve.
Okay. And so what I'll do, I'll introduce the two of you again. Welcome back. We have with us to talk about shelter for the homeless, Mr. James Settles and Mr. Carter Abels. And then I'll make some statement in reference that will tie first part to the second part, and then we'll start with you talking about some of your experiences and some of the things that brought you to Nashville, Tennessee, dealing with housing. Take about 3 or 4 minutes, 3 minutes for that. Then when you get through that 3 minutes, you'll pick up on him and tie into what he's talking about. Listen to what he has to say. Are we ready? Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Mr. James Settles and Mr. Carter Abels, and the topic is shelter for the homeless. Mr. Abels, before we had our first commercial break, we promised that we would give you an opportunity to say something about the great state of Arkansas that sent you to Nashville, and it'll give you an opportunity to sort of bring in the kind of information dealing with shelter for the homeless. And then Mr. Settles will sort of pick up on what you have to say, and then we'll be able to deal with this 8-minute segment from that perspective.
Sure. So I was fortunate to grow up in Jonesboro, Arkansas, so just about an hour northwest of Memphis, so close to Tennessee my whole life. Wound up coming to Nashville in particular to go to Belmont University here, and got connected to the social entrepreneurship program there, which is a really neat program in kind of launching people towards addressing social issues. But talking about housing and what we do, one of the things that is pretty staggering is just the immense need for this kind of housing. I mean, every year in Tennessee, 16,000 people are released from prison. And most of those people, when they're released, if they don't have a support system, if they don't have a job or family to take them in, they're essentially given the clothes on their backs, a one-way bus pass, and maybe $20 to $50. So if you don't have a support system in place, homelessness is inevitable, or those people wind up back incarcerated. And so the challenge that AFSIS House faces is how can we take in as many of those guys as possible and give them a chance to get on their own feet, to become contributing members of society, to find stability, and to re-enter society as productive citizens.
And so, James, you've been involved with this organization for many years, have you not?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what have you found in terms of your experience, looking back over all of the things that you've done so far? What are some of the things that you'd like our audience to know this morning about some of the challenges that you have to face? Certainly, you're trying to deal with incarcerated individuals, 16,000, I'm told, out of the system each year, and certainly you can't meet all of those needs. But what are some of the needs that you're able to meet?
Well, I really believe that one of the things that's a plus for AFSIS House is when men learn better, they actually do better. when men come to Ephesus House, one of the first things we do is help them get their ID, because when you're homeless, you really pretty much have nothing. We help them get ID. We have classes that are centered around job readiness, job retention, financial literacy. And in the evening time, the men are inundated with classes like critical thinking, relapse prevention, that's understanding addiction, anger management. Well, anger management covers a lot of stuff like family reunification. And we have been able to see that when people are impacted with those type of life skills and putting them in an environment where they can grow and be the best that they can be, that it's staggering how people actually do better.
And so in a real sense, you've got a large number of success stories that
Correct.
you can deal with, having dealt with this organization since what, 2003. And so you've got a large number of examples of individuals who've been able to come there and sort of get their lives back together.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so, Mr. Abels, in terms of your situation, what do you do exactly at Ephesus House?
Sure. So James handles all the program. He's our executive director. I just help to try to keep the lights on. So I do the behind the scenes fundraising and trying to bring in enough money to ensure that we can serve the guys as well as possible.
What kind of money do you think that you need in terms of dealing with this? I think that you work dealing with grants and other kinds of methods to bring. Do you find that there's a community of individuals who are out there willing to help you do what you do, or do you find that it's difficult to raise enough money to do what you're doing? Speak from a financial point of view in terms of what you're doing.
Sure. I mean, we're fortunate to have access to some grant opportunities to help what we do. You know, there's unfortunately a stigma sometimes around guys that are former offenders, but we believe that no one is too far gone to start over and find a life of fulfillment. And so we've been fortunate to find people in the community that believe that and who can come alongside us and help empower these men to do that. And so we fundraise with individuals, we do grants. Right now we're trying to raise $100,000 by November to build a new house, which we're pretty excited about, being able to grow our capacity.
And so you've already got structures already completed, and what you're getting ready to go into a new building phase. Is that what you're saying? Why don't you say something about some of the structures that you already have completed?
Sure. So we have, James mentioned, we have 3 transitional facilities right now, serve about 28 guys at a time. The house that we're hoping to construct, we already own the property. This fall will house about 8 more, but James can share more. We're hoping to construct a new campus that will be able to sort of bring all of this under one roof and really increase our capacity.
And in terms of reaching out, and are these individuals involved in some other kind of activity, work-related activity that will not only support them, but would also help to support the facility itself? I mean, what do they do? Certainly they have a program worked out for education and et cetera, but what are some of the other things that they might be able to do to help themselves?
Well, one of the things I'm constantly seeing is people have to be in an environment where they can grow and be the best that they can be, and that's why we're so excited about what we do at Ephesus House, and we're talking about a bigger number of people that we're trying to serve. One of the things we see that happen is when it comes to life skills and what we do right now, it's perfect. And the only thing that we're talking about adding as we add more people to the campus is an apprenticeship program. Because it is true, you don't work, you don't eat. So how do we train and give people life skills, not only life skills, but give them a gift or a trade that they'll be able to fend for themselves. And our goal is hopefully a person can be at Ephesus House for a year and be able to say, hey, I got 2,600 hours in carpentry, or I got 1,900 hours in electrical. And to me, that when you get the man, you not only get him, but you get everything that he comes in contact with. That's his children, that's his wife if he have a wife, or that's his girlfriend. But the key is how do you give him good.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take our first commercial break and our second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. No, we all right.
So what's this last segment?
This is 10 minutes. This is your show. I mean, you know, I don't know anything about this. You know,
Okay.
when these folks graduate or get out of here, I mean, do you have a group that are going through, and have you got some folks that call back and say, hey,
Yeah.
I got a job and I'm doing, you know, give us some examples that, you know, of some of the folks that are doing whatever y'all are doing.
Yeah.
And you got 28 folks in 3 different buildings
Facilities,
and
yeah.
facilities. How long, what's the general length that they stay there? Do they come out of incarceration, stay there for a few months, and then go out and get a good job or whatever? You know, those are the kind of things that we want to hear.
Yeah.
You see, and so, you know, and that's why I want you to tell your story, you know, because you know what, you know, you got some folks that probably came out and working over at NSA, NES, what, you know, working at different jobs, involved in different kinds of things, and have said certain things about your program and et cetera. Yeah, that kind of, you know.
I got you.
Yeah, just, so you got 10 minutes. And so try to keep that chair.
Still.
Yeah, that camera follows that chair. And so, you know, just try to do that. You know, we got 10 minutes, and so we're going to start with, did we start with?
You start with him.
Me last time. So.
Okay, so we're going to start with you. And
Who, me? Cool.
Did we end with you last time?
We started with him.
Okay, but we
ended with
me.
with you. We got to, we'll start over here with you.
And the clock isn't as true, so I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah,
but you did come out good on that last one.
Okay,
Right on
yeah.
time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, after 30 years, I generally come out. I love you. Okay, so we've got 9 minutes and 50 seconds.
Yes.
Okay, and so that's what we have. And so, what I want to know is some of the things that you think people ought to know about your organization and your needs, and some of the successes. You know, that kind of information. You know, if you got somebody that went through a carpentry program and they're now working on one of these big buildings that they have around here and et cetera, because thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Mr. James Settles and Mr. Carter Abels. And they're giving us some information in reference to the ability to deal with individuals who are homeless, and especially those individuals who have been incarcerated. Let's see, Mr. Carter Abels, let's see if you might be able to give us some information in reference to some of the things that you like our audience to know about what you're doing. And we'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to do that. And then Mr. Settles will have you to build up on what he has to say, and we'll try to go from you to him over the last 10 minutes and give you an opportunity to sort of get out as much information as you possibly can in reference to what the two of you are doing. So let's start off with you, Mr. Davis.
Sure. So one thing I think it's important for people to understand about the work that we do is that a lot of these issues that we're working with are deep-seated. It's not something as simple as housing or jobs, but it's taking a look at each individual person and hearing their story and where they came from and where they're trying to go. I mean, we have guys that come into the program that, I mean, their story starts when they're 13, 14 years old, experiencing drugs for the first time, or growing up in broken households that lead them down paths that wind up incarcerated or on the streets. And so one of the things that's really important for us is to work with each guy as an individual and connect him with each service and opportunity that that man needs.
Very good. And of course, you've got many successes that I'm sure since 2003 that you've been able to document during that time. Talk about some of the successes and some of the individuals and some of the challenges that you've had, some of the things that when you go to sleep at night, you think in terms of what you have to do tomorrow. And from that perspective, give us that kind of insight into what goes on there.
Well, one of the things I'm thankful for that Ephesus House provides is an environment that's safe, that's clean, and that's supportive to the client. Even myself, you know, a lot of people may look at me today and look at the glory, but really don't even know the story. You know, I too rode the bus for 6 months and had to start off from being faithful over little and allowing God to place you over much. So I try to take that same application and apply it to the client. And what I find that the client do is the client actually receives it and grow from it. We have several people that not only graduate the program and come back, but these men are just human beings just like anybody else, just made some bad decisions in the future and now are needing to get back centered up. So how do we help the client get centered back up? You know, we've been dealing with an approach of we lock them up and throw away the key, or when people make bad decisions or bad choices, even dealing with drugs, we want to kick them out of the car. But you know, people are worthy of an opportunity, and that's what we want to provide for the client, is an opportunity. And our main hold now is to contact different agencies that will be willing to work with Ephesus House in a program, in an apprenticeship program, giving these guys an opportunity to learn a trade and to be the best that they can be. Because it is true, when you get a guy sober and you put him in an environment where he can grow and be the best that he can be, that employer, he gets a good employee, you know, and hopefully it's something that would not just only start from right there and be something that that client and that employee can have something to smile about as they go in the future.
You know, Mr. Carter, I think you mentioned the fact that you deal quite a bit with grants. What are some of the things that you try to indicate in the grants that you're applying for, and what are some of the responses that you have in reference to the grants? And do you have any idea in terms of looking around at some of the building and some of the all of that activity that's going on here and to try to buy into that? I think Mr. Settles indicated that you're probably doing that, but talk about it from that perspective. We've got about 5 minutes before we end this show for today, but I'm sure that our audience would be curious in reference to some of the things that, some of the needs that we're talking about here.
Sure. So in any kind of anytime that we approach a funder to try to partner with to accomplish this work, it's really important for us to communicate the need, which I've shared a bit about here. Our capacity to do something about it, which we feel confident in our ability to really help these guys and get them to the place that they need to be and work with them to do that. And also just, identifying the opportunity for growth, for us to really expand this ministry to do more. So I mentioned, there's such a huge need with so many guys on the streets today and coming out of incarceration. So we have 28 beds. We have over 100 people on our waiting list at all times. Dozens of applications every week that we have to turn away. And so for us right now, a big focus is, how can we build our foundation, make sure we're good, we're continuing to do the work that we can, but how can we take in more? How can we serve more? So one of the things we're really excited about is the growth of a new campus and a new facility, and we want people to participate in that, you know, buy into it, and as a community rally around these guys. I mean, people can come and be a mentor to these guys. They can come and even teach a class if that's their expertise. You know, they can come engage and rally around these guys. And so that's really what we're looking for.
Well, Mr. Settles, thinking in terms of grants and opportunities, what have you done in reference to reaching out to the state of Tennessee to indicate that they might be able to give you grants in order to help you? Have you thought in terms of getting grants, the federal grants as well as state grants, and what is the state of Tennessee doing in reference to that?
Well, we have reached out to the state and federal, and we get a small contribution from federal and state. But it takes more than federal and state funding. It takes funding from all angles. And when I say all angles, it takes funding from private donors, and we also want to make sure that the client buy into it too. So the client has some kind of responsibility as well, because one of the things in America is nowhere do you live for free. So one of our things is we try to make sure that the client has a responsibility into being into the program. That means he has to give something, because when he leaves Ephesus House, he's going to have to pay rent somewhere. So we want to do this thing where the foundation is right for everybody.
So in a real sense, they live there rent-free and without any kind of compensation from them in terms of helping you to move your organization forward. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, but that may be initially. But see, our goal is, how do we take a client that comes to Ephesus House with nothing and help that client establish a foundation where that client is a tax-paying citizen and he's also participating in paying where he lives.
And so it gives them an opportunity to demonstrate the success of this program by giving back to the program. And while you got 28 individuals there, these individuals, once they are there for a while, will have an opportunity to assist the organization in terms of what you're all trying to do. Each person in a real sense represents an individual who can reach out in order to support your program. Is that what we're saying?
That is correct. That is correct.
Now, Mr. Carter, what are some of the last statements? We've got about 50 seconds here. What are some of the last statements that you'd like to leave with our audience this morning in reference to what you're doing here?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having us, and we're excited with what we're doing, and we want to encourage anyone who might be watching to participate in this work. It's so important. Feel free to call our office, go to our website, and get involved. And on a personal level with us, however they see fit.
And so in a real sense, there are many opportunities that can help the two of you to make this organization much more powerful and much more important than it really is. But nevertheless, I think that the two of you are doing some great work. And I think working with 28 formerly incarcerated individuals is really a step forward. And let me thank the two of you for coming by. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. And with 4 minutes, general. And yes, ma'am. Everything is all right and everything is well. How's that?
Yeah, I'm here with Nashville's finest, the great historian himself, Dr. Just enjoying life, informing the public. Keep going. Well, I ran out of words now. I'm here with Dr. James Haney on the set, trying to make some things happen here. I'm Pastor Kelvin L. Walker, Nashville, Tennessee. Born, bred, and raised here. Lovely parents, no longer alive. They left me here to carry on. And if that sounds good enough, the mic check is over. All right, Phil, wake up.
Is that it?
Okay, now we'll take you. That was good.
Ms. Burns.
Hello, I'm Ashley Burns.
Speak up, Ms. Burns. You were born.
Oh, okay. So we just got to go on and talk about. I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, all of my life.
That's right.
I was raised by a single parent and by my grandmother as a teenager. I'm a TSU graduate. From my understanding, Dr. Haney is also.
Oh yes, big time. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is meeting the needs of neglected and homeless or abused children. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about some of the needs of abused and neglected children, Pastor Kay Walker. And I think that many of us are familiar with Pastor Kay Walker. He's been responsible for bringing individuals to us, and he has with him this morning Miss Ashley Burns, who is also an individual who has been responsible for dealing with abused and neglected children. And let me welcome you, Pastor Walker, and you, Miss Ashley Burns, to the show this morning. And to start off with you, Pastor, by having you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And Ms. Burns will give us the similar kind of information dealing with her situation. Okay. And then we'll have an opportunity to get out of this first segment and then go into the next segment for 8 minutes dealing with this issue of meeting the needs of abused and neglected children. Let's do it from that perspective.
All right, well, good morning to you also, Dr. Haney, and thanks again for allowing us the opportunity to come on your show. You know your show has been running for years and it's a very informative show, and I think a lot of people out there watching and a lot of people are being informed. My name is Pastor Kelvin L. Walker. I'm no stranger here, of course, been a almost like a sidekick to you for some.
From the very, very beginning.
Yes, sir.
For many years.
And I appreciate you and everything you do. I was born right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Two good parents. They raised me right way, raised me well. I didn't always take heed to what they said. I was educated in the public school system up until a point. I always say I got kicked out of the school system. Went into the United States Navy, stayed a short period of time, got out of there, and pursued a GED through Opportunities Industrialization Centers, OIC. Spent 6 months doing that, got the GED, and then went to Tennessee State University. Had a desire to become a fashion designer, but got caught up in drug addiction and the like, and they kind of derailed that along the way and ended up incarcerated in the state prison system for a period of time of my life. But back in 1986, on August 24th, God divinely intervened in my life, changed my life, brought me and called me into ministry, and I've been serving others ever since that time, and trying to make contact with people that are out here on the ground, getting things done in terms of helping and serving people in whatever way and whatever capacity. It just gives me pleasure to be here today to bring on the show Mrs. Ashley Burns, and I met her through the juvenile court system after my daughter was murdered back in March the 24th, 2015, and we went to take custody of our grandchildren, my wife and I, grandchildren, so that's how we met.
Very good. And Ms. Burns, let's talk about your background, your education, some of your experiences.
Absolutely. And then I have some personal experience as well that brought me into this field. Well, first of all, my education is I'm a TSU graduate. Actually started my first year at UT Martin and then finished it out at TSU. My major was completely different. Was fighting for what I knew that I was supposed to be, even though I didn't know exactly what that was. I knew it was something to do with children, but I wasn't sure. And got interested because I was failing my pre-med classes. I ended up pursuing in child advocacy. Was thinking about an attorney, but knew I wanted to be more of a advocacy role than actually what an attorney because of the politics. Actually wanted to be more of what, even though there was a lot of stigma with, of course you don't make a lot of money, and as a case manager. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go that route even though, because this is my passion. And I realized that more and more. I did an internship with juvenile court when I was at TSU working at juvenile court. I was interning for probation officer at Elizabeth Dial, and just fell in love with that kind of work. And I realized because of my background, because it was so rocky, I was the first one that graduated in my family, in my immediate family. I wanted to pursue something that involved the court, especially when it came to delinquency and actually child abuse. I think there's a big correlation with that. More than we realized, and that was kind of my focus, even though and that was my love, is to work with the delinquent children because there is such a big correlation with the abused and neglected child.
Very good, and I think we have, Pastor, an excellent show here that will give us a lot of information. I think that your background and your activities will be very, very important in terms of helping us to see some of the needs of some of the abused and neglected children. And of course, we're going to take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Is, that's, and I think that's always the best. And so we've got 8 minutes when we come back, Pastor. And then we'll start off with you. What do you want to talk about neglected children and abused children? I mean, that's our general topic, but what would you like to say for about 3 or 4 minutes in reference to that? And then he'll take about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back with you for second statements, about 2 minutes, and then we'll end that segment with you. Okay. But we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I'll focus on what the court is doing, and then I'll go into some of the just intervention type of deal that I like to focus on with the community and being a support. Yeah,
that's good. In other words, you'll give us an opportunity to see what the juvenile justice system is all about in a real sense. Is that what we're saying?
I'm definitely going to try. Yes.
Okay, that's all, and we've got 8 minutes.
I think a lot of people are not aware of that.
Just take the first 2 or 3 minutes and talk about that, and then he'll have an opportunity, and so we'll just divide the 8 minutes between the two of you, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, a minute, and et cetera, back and forth like that, to give both of you an opportunity to have a good stretch of minutes to make some, excuse me, some statements.
It's your show.
Said it. That's awesome.
I don't mind going on mute.
Thank you, excuse me, thank you, and welcome back to the show this morning. The topic this morning is meeting the needs, excuse me, of abused and neglected children. And we're fortunate to have with us again Pastor Kay Walker and Miss Ashley Burns. Mr. Burns, let's have you to take a few minutes of this segment to give us some information in reference to some of the things that you do as a person who has been involved with neglected and abused children.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I've been with the court for 10 years. I've been in at least 2 different positions with the court. There has been a lot of changes. First I started at Family Services, and then I think about 4 or 5 years. Then I worked with supervised probation, and now the court is moving in a different direction with our new judge, Sheila Calloway. I believe this is going to come up her 4th year. And she is focusing on more of intervention and community supporting the families that we serve, and especially prevention before they even get to the court, or if it can be handled in a formal way. So they're really trying to focus on that. And that's stretching us as well of how can we meet the needs of children, because regardless of how they're coming, there is an issue with abuse and neglect. Anytime you deal with drug addiction, anytime you deal with the different issues that they're faced, whether it be directly an NND issue, even children just screaming at their children, still that could result. If not, maybe that kid to be violent if we don't address the needs. And they're simple needs, like it might be a program, or it might be a connection. Hey, do you know somebody that does this or that? I tell my families all the time, just because I close your case doesn't mean you can't call me. And if I can't find out the answer, I'll definitely try to find out who can. And that's the big part of it. It's the simple things that we can do in the community. It's building those relationships, calling people back when you say you're going to call people back, treating them with respect. Because no matter what, I realized from one of the major big support systems of juvenile court, icon, in my opinion, of juvenile court, Miss Julia Tucker just passed away. And she was been at the court for years. And she always said, when I did my internship, treat people the way you would want to be treated. And you're going to be okay out there on the streets, and doing the case management and that kind of thing. Because we're in some dangerous situations a lot of times and don't even realize it because of the covering of being more of a support instead of, how dare you did this, oh my gosh, you did this. Instead, we're focusing more on how can we make simple solutions. It might be my 4-year-old grows out of her clothes, I give them to the neighbor next door in our community. And of course, we're out there, right there in James Casey. There's 2 offices out there with juvenile court. So it's the simple things that we can get involved, whether it be something big that is on national TV or on the on TV, or something that is more under the radar. It's all very important, and I think we all need to be encouraged more as being out there in the field as case managers and workers. It's very draining, and to know that we are doing something. It might be something small. I considered it small what I did with Pastor Walker. I just did a home study, but in even God's eyes, that's big to do the little things. And of course, the negativity of this world does want us to say that we're not doing enough but it's to do something.
Just to be there is very, very important. Is that what she's saying, Pastor?
Yeah, you know, especially with the support that the course is leaning toward doing now. That's what I'm hearing. You know, the course is wanting to not just bring people in and just adjudicate them, but to offer a means of prevention, and then even if when they get into the system, to be able to support them in such a way to help a person grow from where they are when they initially come in. Because I think, Dr. Haney, when you take a child that's neglected, you know, and you take a child, let me say it like this, you take a child that's acting out in school, in a lot of situations, it's stemming from the fact that that child's probably neglected at home. You take a child that maybe gets frustrated in school because they can't keep up academically with other children, and the reason why they're not keeping up because maybe the parent is not helping them at home with their homework and getting involved and showing concern with them, so they get in the school system, and then they don't know what the other children know, and then you get frustrated, and then they begin to act out in a setting like that. And you know, those are things that I see as neglect, you know. But a lot of times parents that are neglecting children in such a way may not be seeing that and may not notice and understand that when you don't meet the needs of those children, then you're neglecting those children. And I think that, as far as I'm concerned, with myself personally, the fact that I had the opportunity, the privilege to become an adult, you know, I should lend my voice and my support, you know, to children, to be able to help them, you know, to be a voice for them, to be a support for them, to be a help for them, so that they can have an opportunity to grow up as well and to live a peaceful and productive and constructive life. You know.
You thinking in terms of what you do every day, Ms. Ashley, what would you say that one of the biggest challenges that you have to face dealing with children that are abused or neglected? What are some of the one or two large things that loom in your mind that if we could change this, things would be much better?
I think one of the biggest changes, of course, it's with ourselves anytime we're struggling, is changing that will. I was discussing with Pastor Walker about, like, when you say parenting classes, or if you say, it's all how you approach, especially the families, because again, we got to realize, okay, where do we start with? What is the actual problem? It might be the parent, or they might be just at their ends right with everything that's going on. They might be dealing with a murder. I dealt with a family over the phone before I got here that the mother is struggling with her son just got killed, and then her daughter's in drug addiction. So it's just one of those things of what can you do to support that, of thinking authentically and out of the box. Like maybe not to focus that it's parenting classes, maybe to focus that it's what the specific issue of, maybe twisting it of just some encouragement.
Okay, and so what we're going to do actually is to take our second commercial break, and then we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. About, because anything that you might say is probably news to a large number of folks who are watching this. They might know something about the system, but you know, I think you can give them an example of what is going on and some of the challenges that you have to face living with these children.
Okay.
Okay, so this will be our 10-minute segment.
Okay.
Now we're going to start this 10-minute segment off with you.
Okay.
and then you take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then you will take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll give you and probably have about a minute apiece. Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. They're ready. Stand by.
Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker and Miss Ashley Burns, and the topic is meeting the needs of neglected and abused children. And Pastor Walker, let's talk about, over the last 10 minutes that we have, some of the things that you think that our audience ought to know in terms of how we might be able to greater deal with some of the children that are neglected or abused. And Ms. Burns will sort of tie into what you're talking about, and she'll take about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll go back and eventually end this show for today.
Well, you know, Dr. Henry, I think one of the things I think adults need to as adults, we need to open our eyes and pay more close attention to youth. Not only our own children, but children in general. Because children are experiencing, you know, in this day and age, peer pressure that these children are facing in this day and age, man, it's just unbelievable. And they are displaying certain behaviors and character defects and faults and stuff like that. And instead of criticizing and talking about, and that's a bad little boy right there, that's a mean little girl, and that kind of stuff like that, you know, I think we should be trying to find a way to ask ourselves, you know, there's got to be a reason. There's something at the core there that's causing this child to maybe act this way or behave this way. And as the topic suggests, we're talking about meeting the needs, because if a child is, in my opinion, if a child is acting out in a way that's really just, you know, off the track,
outrageous in a real sense.
Yeah, you know, there's got to be something there. In a lot of cases, you know, there's some neglect. There's a lack of love maybe that's being shared with that child, you know, and that child is rebelling against the fact that they're not being loved and cared for and nourished the way that my Bible tells us that we should do. You should nourish a child. And I'll be the first to say that I wasn't the greatest parent, you know, around, because at that time I was caught up in my own active drug addiction when I was young, and I was wild and stuff like that when my boys and stuff were born and stuff. So, you know, but I grew. I had a desire to be a good parent, you know, and I grew into it. You know what I'm saying?
Most people do.
Yeah, but you know, you got folks out here that think they know what they're doing, and to suggest to them, you know, why don't you do a parenting class or something like that? And that's like, oh, parenting class, you know, I got this, you know, you do a parenting class.
Anybody
Yeah.
can be a parent.
Yeah.
Is that what we're, and I would imagine you run across that kind of attitude quite often in what you do, Ms. Burns.
Right, and it's approach, I think, is important, because how do we break those barriers? Because a lot of these families, you know, and just like ourselves, we all have a history, you know, with how do we, a lot of them have been abused and neglected, or in drug addiction, and some of them are still active. So how can we break those barriers? And I think Pastor Walker said one of the keys is love, because a kid and everybody needs love. And how do you access that to, because as children, they have to have that in order to survive. They have to, and I when I do home studies, I'd have grandparents, you know, they'd be very concerned, and you know, I would say freaking out about, you know, their well-being of their child. And I'm like, look, there's plenty of kids. I worked in DCS in foster care for a year. I was like, look, there's plenty of kids out there that have nobody. I said, but they have you, and that's very important, because that is what's going to make the difference. With love, things will make a difference, and that's important. And then the challenge that I have, and I think workers have that care about people and that are trying really hard not to be jaded, is how do you get somebody to really know that you care about them, and you're not being judgmental, but you're actually doing that because you do care. So how do you show that? And in reality, it's to just be natural with it, to be, you know, concerned, and I'm here if you choose it. But unfortunately, we do have to deal with people's will. But we do our best, and we definitely continue to do what we can And prayer is a big part of that too, of being focused of what do I need to do? Because I could be focused all over the place, but what do I need to do to be focused? And it's so it's important to tell them to be very real and be honest, because and again, the court is not being punitive at all, but then in my mind, children do need those boundaries, and then a lot of them don't have the parents that need to show them the boundaries. So how do we do that as a community? I think that's what's very frustrating for me, that because I have to be so candid with some of the kids of like, if I see your name in obituary somewhere, I can say I tried, but you gotta want to. And I maybe some people would disagree with my approach, but I have to be real and honest. And also I have a conscience, and I really do care about families of saying if something did happen, because I've only had one so far. And I can honestly say when I went to the funeral that I tried. And I think as society, we have to have that. And we have to break down the barriers of where we're not so jaded, where we're still in this fight to love one another. And not talking about no love of letting them do whatever they want. That's not real love. Love is, I'm going to fight for you despite of all the resistance that you're showing. I always give my families that what comes to mind every time I talk to them is, you may go over me, you may go under me, but if I see you jumping off a cliff or jumping off the deep end, my hands are gonna fly. I'm gonna try until it's all said and done. And then if you go over me or under me, then that's your business. But at least I can say with my conscience, I've done it. I think that's the key to this work, because it's a serious, it's important work. It's what makes society, worth living, what makes life worth living. It's very important, and I think a lot of us get jaded in this work, and we have to continue to fight.
As a matter of fact, I think one of the most important things, I think we've said this on many occasions, Pastor, and we talk about love, and I think that no matter what situation a child or an individual might be in, if you demonstrate to that individual, no matter who you are or who that child or who that person might be, that you have respect, understanding, goodwill toward them, and that you wish them the best.
Absolutely.
And I think that if you demonstrate that to an individual, no matter what situation that they might come from, I think that they're able to buy into some of the things. As a matter of fact, you have to demonstrate that before you can start teaching them anything.
Oh yes, it's amazing, because with my with my grandchildren, they're just out of the blue. Granddaddy, what? I love you, and Granny, I love you, and come and want to hug. Sometimes I'll be asleep, they'll come wake me up. I just want to hug, But it's because we're showing them that kind of love. And when you look at love attracts, and you see young people being attracted to these gangs. It's about these gangs are showing a strange kind of love that's attracting these young people to the gangs, because they feel like they got a sense of camaraderie there, and there's a sense of loyalty, and they're making them feel like you're wanted, you're needed, you belong, you love. But it's a strange kind of love, but at the same time it's attracting them, but that love, there's a power in this thing called love.
Love is strange.
And it's a powerful thing, and if you walk in it consistently, and you fashion and form your life based upon how can I meet an individual's need, as opposed to what can I get from this individual. I think you have a better way, and especially like breaking that barrier down, and when you're trying to reach these families to make them see that that there is a need for them to maybe get some training in terms of how to raise a child. If you approach them, again, if it's from a foundation of love, people can sense it. People can feel it. People can identify with it. Even the coldest heart, the power of love will penetrate it.
It will.
Yeah, it penetrates it.
Ms. Burns, the final minute of this show.
Also, I think it's good to talk about resiliency, because even when you're dealing with what people would consider the meanest or the baddest, there's still beauty within that person of what can we access, how can we access them to meet their full potential. And that's what I love about even the delinquent, what's considered the delinquent child, is how can we because the more resistance, actually, the more that greater they can be. Because if they could come out of the gangs, if they could come out and show that love, how many others can they reach?
Very good. And of course, Pastor and Mr. Burns, let me thank the two of you for being here with us this morning. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.